Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of December 14th, 2023. And Mr. Shorten will lead us in the pledge today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Pamela Altoff. Here. Carolyn Campbell. Here. Joseph Gottemoller. Here. Terry Greeno. Here. Eric Hendricks. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
James Kearns. Here. Matthew Kunkel. Here. Teresa Meshes. Here. Lou Ness. Here. John Reinhardt. Here. Brian Sager. Michael Shorten. Here. Michael Scala.
Present.
Larry Smith. Gloria Van Hoff. Present. Tracy Von Bergen. Here. Kelly Wegner. Here. And Chairman Bueller.
Here. Having a quorum, we'll proceed to my comments, and I'll keep them brief this morning. Besides reviewing the agenda for next Tuesday's voting meeting, we have both a presentation and the need for an executive session, followed by a staff holiday luncheon after our meeting. County administration and I have been busy over the past week working with area lawmakers in advance of the next state legislative session. On Friday, I traveled to Chicago with Law and Government Committee Chairwoman Pam Altoff, County Coordinator Shaylin Daigle, and Communications and Project Manager Alicia Schuler to attend the annual luncheon of the Illinois State Association of Counties. We met and networked with our fellow county representatives and state lawmakers, working together ahead of the January start of the General Assembly's spring session. I'd like to thank State Senator Don DeWitt for coming to McHenry County Council of Governments office on Monday to meet with us regarding the Collier County perspective of RTA reform, a topic we know the General Assembly will soon be grappling with. Meetings like these, whether they be hosted by ISACO, McCog, or whoever, are vital as we continue to craft our annual McHenry County legislative agenda for 2024. On a related note, our state representatives will be coming January 9th to our Law and Government Committee meeting so we can communicate to them our priorities for the new year. I'd like to share with you that U.S. Representatives Jan Schakowsky and Brad Schneider will be coming to visit the Sheriff's Office's new Regional Training Center for a tour on the morning of December 21st. And finally, this morning, you'll find a resolution from the Coroner's Office at your seat requesting funds to cover additional costs related to autopsies, toxicology, and transportation. This will be added to new and unfinished business when the agenda is reposted on Friday. And that concludes my remarks, and this brings us to the next item on our agenda, which will be public comment, followed by a presentation from the McHenry County Historical Society and Museum Executive Director Wayne Durkes. While he's coming up here, I'll remind you that we will need to hold an executive session at the end of the meeting today. Right. Do any members have comments today? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. No public comments? Wayne, you're up. Wait a minute. Sorry, Wayne. I like the way you move, though. Quick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lou Leone. My address is 201 West Diggins in Harvard, Illinois. I'm just here speaking on behalf of the LGMC class. Thank you for inviting us here to observe. I'm also doing this as a city administrator to demonstrate to my fellow classmates exactly how public comments go, and typically they're to talk about things that are either that are not on the agenda, but stuff that you feel important to bring up to, in this case, the county commission, or county board. So that's all I wanted to say, and again, I was just more or less doing this as a demonstration for my classmates. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, Mr. Durkes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, board, for allowing me to take just a few minutes to introduce ourselves and ask a quick question. My name is Dr. Wayne Durkis. I am the new executive director at the McHenry County Historical Society and Museum. With me today is Janet Barron, our outreach coordinator, and we will be placing cards there, so in case you guys want to reach out to us. First off, we've been in the county for 60 years, and we would like to continue to have a fruitful relationship with the county board. We have been a repository for some of the records that you guys have turned over time, and we just want to have a good, positive working relationship with all of you. At any time, any member of the board or of the fine audience here that would like to stop by 6422 Main Street in Union, Illinois to review the museum or the library, please feel free and stop by. Now, the one question I have of you, sir, or the board is, does the county have any plans for the 250th anniversary in 2026 of the United States? And part two, if so, can we contribute in any way in those plans?
We're still in the planning stages.
Okay, fair enough. Well,
But we
in those
would
planning
welcome your
stages,
input, absolutely, sure.
if you would like us to participate in any way, shape, or form, we are there for the board to do that for you.
Absolutely, thank you.
And I will send you an email, sir, about how we'll continue to keep the board informed of what is happening. And if you want to reply with that, with any contact people, when that time comes, I'd be happy to receive them.
Sure.
Is there any questions of me from the board? All right, if not, sir, I thank you for your time. I will drop off my cards.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed to new business. Do any members have items from Tuesday's agendas they'd like to remove for discussion? Mr. Scala?
16, B as in boy, 2-5, please.
Okay. Ms. Greeno?
17A1, please.
Seeing no others, Mr. Scala, you're up.
Good morning, board. So we just got passed out to us some language change by the state's attorney's office. So at finance meeting, we had a very lengthy discussion regarding this question, and we wordsmithed it for 40 minutes or so. But it was very productive, and we feel like it made the question a much clearer for the voters that are going to be looking at it. We did ask the state's attorney's office to then review the work that we had done for not only compliance, but for the clarity that we were trying to achieve. So the state's attorney's office came back this morning and proposed some alternative language for consideration. Really didn't alter the language by which the finance committee changed, but added some more clarifying language. And so I guess I would ask if the state's attorney could explain, come up and explain the rationale for what is being now proposed.
Good morning, everyone. Kyle Broad from the State's Attorney's Office. This has been something that I've been working on since this was put forth to the State's Attorney's Office to make sure that we have some clarity and clarification about what's going to be recommended to be put on a resolution, and then ultimately for your consideration to put forth to the voters. Essentially, for the summarizing the legal procedure behind it, this is a combination of two different referenda questions. I can cite those statutes for you, I'd be happy to do that, but without essentially throwing a whole bunch of numbers at you. It's from the special occupation, retail occupation sales tax language that's right from the statute, from the county's code, and also from the Community Mental Health Act, discontinuing the property tax. There is some language in there, I believe in Article 20, Section 9 of that statute, that has specific language about the discontinuance on a petition, but again, this is by referendum and certainly within the authority of the governing board of the unit of local government, being the McHenry County, to place on a resolution for the board. So we're combining, again, for your consideration, combining two referenda questions into one, and providing that additional language to more mirror that language in the Community Mental Health Act, if that makes sense. So that was the reason for the clarification. I was, obviously the process was a little bit ongoing, so I apologize getting it to you just this morning. But again, we have, want to make sure I got it to you regardless.
So Kyle, could you explain what you mean by combining two questions into one?
So yes, of course. So the initial portion of the question, to pay for mental health purposes, shall McHenry County be authorized to impose an increase on its share of local sales tax by 1/4%? Question mark. This would mean that a consumer would pay an additional 25 cents in sales tax for every $100 of tangible personal property bought at retail. That is directly from the statute, specifically 55 ILCS 5/5-1006.5A4. That is right from, I know, it's right, that's the summarized version. That's right from the statute. Now, we had recommended some additional language to ultimately execute to what I believe has been the intent of the board, is to replace the revenue stream for the mental health board, still providing revenue for the mental health board, specifically for the overall mental health purpose, from the already imposed community mental health tax, property tax increase. And I believe that was in October, I have the exact date, I apologize. October 21st of 1965, there was a resolution that was passed by the McHenry County Board asking the voters to consider, and I believe was passed, the 0.1% annual tax levy for the property taxes. So executing the intent of the board, or what I understand the board would be, was to switch the revenue streams. So having said that, we now need to consider the referendum on the Community Mental Health Act, of which that resolution back in 1965 was authorized to impose, and the special occupation sales tax that we are now considering or putting forth for your consideration to put on a resolution. So having those two statutes homogenized into one question for the voters is where this language is coming from. I hope that was clear. I apologize. That's I guess kind of the game board explanation of connecting all of the statutes to our understanding, but that's the reason for the language that we have, or that was proposed, and with the continued research that I've done for the board, just some clarifying language as well.
And the second half of the question, just for our audience.
The second half of that question is this, and this was the portion that I believe Member Scala had reference for the language being put forth by the Finance Committee. This sales tax would take effect on July 1st of 2024. This would remove the $10,975,000 from the property tax levy allocated for the Mental Health Board effective November 30th of 2024.
So,
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Kyle, could you also, so at Finance, there was a clarification on the use of the funds, and just for the full board, could you please go over that again?
Yes, of course. So I had done some research for you all, but for the court administrator, for county administration, excuse me, about my opinion, the State Attorney's Office opinion, about whether or not these funds for mental health purposes would also be the same purpose for which the funds are used currently under the Community Mental Health Act, under the property tax levy. Because mental health purpose is not defined, it is ultimately my opinion that, let me take a step back, I apologize. There was an issue with whether or not mental health purpose would include not just mental illness, but also developmental disability services for persons with a developmental disability and substance use disorder. It is my opinion that the mental health purpose, of which is not defined, but I believe is the intent of the legislature in effectuating this change to the statute, would include all of those. Would include specifically mental illness, mental health purpose, would include persons services for persons with developmental disabilities, and substance use disorder.
Okay, thank you. That was all the clarification I needed on behalf of Finance.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Altoff?
Again, you did a great job. however, question.
Sure.
I heard you say that the intent is to do a complete swap so that we would reduce the levy to nothing and we would provide all of the additional revenues from that sales tax implementation that we're asking for. There was some discussion at committees about doing a backstop in the levy for mental health. I don't think you can answer, but I would ask the board what our intent is, because it was my understanding that we are going to still include some funds in our next levy to ensure that we were able to provide as much money as we could to mental health. So I would just ask for some point during our discussion to clarify that, if we could, please.
Mr. Scala, this was discussed in committee, correct?
This was discussed at finance quite a bit at length, and I mean, it's open to the full board to have the same discussion over again, but basically, at finance, it was determined that if the mental health board created a reserve fund based on usage, because there will be some fluctuation of sales tax dollars in the years going out, that would be able to, I guess, put a leveling off of funds so that theoretically the providers that are getting the awards would not see a dip just because sales tax went down. So because currently they're getting just short of 11 million, the sales tax would generate approximately 14 million in the first year. The finance committee discussed not giving to providers all of that 14 million, but keep some back in a reserve fund so that when and if sales tax decreases slightly because of whatever conditions are going on outside, that the providers themselves would not see the swings of a property or swings of a tax levy versus a property tax levy.
And my only response to that is that public health, the conversation committee was to do a backstop. So I need that clarified from the full board as to which direction we're going to go in.
Yeah, and the committee discussed that, and we felt that, well, I'll speak for myself. My concern with the backstop is the intent of the board. So current 18-member intent of the board is one thing. If a board changes over going into the future, how many ever years, and that backstop is still present, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned that that could then be flushed out and increased again. And so for me, I have an issue with that as a taxpayer that, the old adage say that, we don't trust government would come into effect here for me personally. And so to me, it's you're asking me to pay more on a sales tax. I want to make sure that government can't go back and double tax me at some point in the future.
Again, thank you. My last comment. Absolutely understood personal comment. I have two in response to that. One is you just told me you're creating a fund to keep some of those sales tax dollars back. There's no reason to believe that a board coming forward won't increase that fund as well. Same thing in my estimation. And the other is we're asking to put this referendum question in March, which doesn't give us a whole lot of time to educate the general public. We also know that there are less people that come out to a March primary to vote than there would be in November. It's the same thing to me. You're not educating the people you represent as to what you're doing. They're going to find out after the fact. So I understand your argument. I just, again, am asking, regardless of what anybody's opinion or position is, I just want to have the discussion so it's clear. Thank you, Mr. Scala.
Ms. Beshes?
Thank you. So I have a concern which seems kind of echoed, maybe Pam meant to imply this or not, but I think it's too soon to put the referendum out. I think there's a lot of confusion as to where is this idea coming from. Somebody has said to me, well, the mental health board decided that they should explain it. And I'm like, from my experience, or what I think is true, is that a member of the public proposed this through our budget discussions, and then members of this board were like, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that. And then we're washing our hands of it, saying it's not our job to educate the public. We can't, it's not from us, it's for the mental health board. They should do the work, and actually they can't do the work, so the provider should do the work. And it's
effort that seems really misguided, that there isn't, we haven't put the thought into what this means. Somebody asked me, have we looked into the research of how sales tax increases impact local business, how they impact the residents or the community who has to pay the sales tax? Generally, there is a section of people who one might label as progressives who don't think sales tax is the proper way to do these services because it's a regressive tax. I would say at this point, if you're gonna vote on this right now, if I had to vote as a voter right now on this referendum, I would vote no. So I agree that the voters should decide on it. And as a county board member, I will vote to support the referendum going out in November. But likely as a voter in November, I would vote no. And that's because there's not enough information. I'm not convinced that this is a better way to tax other than over property tax, though I understand that it would bring more money to the mental health board. On whose backs is that money coming from? And you know, I don't have enough information as a county board member, which says to me that there's not enough information that's available to voters. So if we don't know who is pushing this, if the public doesn't know who's pushing this, it's just a very misguided effort on my view. So I would say, yes, the referendum should occur, but not until November, when we have more time to give people an idea of who's going to give out a fact sheet about this.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes, I have some serious concerns about this as well, reiterating what Member Althoff and Member Meshes both said. When this was presented to us, it sounded like a good idea. I still felt a little leery about it, but when I heard the estimates of how much it would generate in sales taxes, approximately 14 million, I thought this sounds great. But it was presented to us with the idea that there would be a backstop. That disappeared. It totally went away. Member Scala would have you believe that we are the only board that would be conscious of inflating the budget. So that's not true. I believe that our future boards will have that same conscious about keeping that there. I do believe that a backstop should be in place. Without it, I will vote no. If I had to vote on this today, the way the language is, I would vote no. Putting it on a referendum in March is too soon. That only gives us, 12 weeks to educate the public? We can't, as board members, we can't advocate for it, but we can educate our constituents. We don't have time to do that. Maybe by November we would, but if that backstop is not there, I still won't vote for it. It may pass without my vote, so be it. Thank you.
Ms. Greeno?
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that in this referendum, the language on personal property at retail, will the public know that that excludes food and medicine?
If you're asking me,
I mean, is that commonly known?
I'm afraid I can't answer that.
So that's something where the information that's put out to the public would be in a frequently asked question, so they would clarify what is personal property that would be taxed.
We have discussed, actually this past Monday, we discussed putting an FAQ page up on the county's website.
Excellent.
And that exact question would be on the FAQ and answered appropriately.
Okay. And then
So it would be food, medicine, and medical devices, if I'm correct, that would not be part of this tax.
great. Okay, that's great, and that'll be good for clarification. Also, I know that there was a point brought up in the Finance Committee regarding the recession and that decreasing, with a lower economy, possibly having a lower sales revenue. However, with inflation being at 25% and increasing at a lower rate, but still increasing, that would balance any concern about the impact of the recession. We do know that this would increase at at minimum, an additional $3 million to the Mental Health Board, so that's a plus. Having this in the primary season actually would favor the passage of the referendum versus having it in a presidential election year in November. And also, that would allow it to take effect on July 1st. This type of a referendum does not require a significant campaign. I mean, nobody's going to be going out and hiring maybe they will. I don't know who would do that. I don't know the groups that would be doing it. But the importance, too, of the language where we will replace is exactly the point of this board. For example, many of us voted for a motor fuel tax with the intent that the levy would not increase, then turned around and had the levy increase too, so there was the double hit. And so we want to make absolutely certain that the Mental Health Board has the funding that it needs and doesn't also have a levy tax on top of it, where again, the constituents would be double taxed. Thank you.
Ms. Ness?
So just to clarify, 14 million sounds like a lot of money. I want to just state that the Mental Health Board requested a 2.5 increase in the last budget round and got 525 and a one-time allocation of 270. So this money would really only stabilize existing services. It would not allow for an expansion of new services in this county, one of which is a badly needed inpatient facility for adolescents here. We currently port our children to other states for care. That's egregious to me that we do that. And so it's not like they're getting a lot more money because they needed more than we gave them. And I know that they were disappointed but grateful for what they got. And I do appreciate the work of the Finance Committee. So our intention then is to stabilize existing programs, not to expand or grow them. I think taxes are complicated. If you've been watching the Northwest Herald, you notice that surrounding communities, fire districts, are all implementing a referendum for property tax increases because communities are starving for cash just to do maintenance. So I don't know how many will end up being on the ballot in March, but we'll be competing. And I can tell you, while there may be an appetite that this is an easy pass, voters don't like anything with the word tax in it. And we've done a really good job of convincing our residents they're overburdened by taxes. So now we did the gas tax, and now we're going to do this tax without enough time to educate voters on the importance of what we're doing. So I echo Member Mesh's comments. This is a thoughtful, deliberate process. I support the sales tax. I'm not in opposition to that. However, how we educate voters is so important. I mean, I've had people come up and say, "You want to tax me some more?" And so then I spend 15 minutes explaining exactly what I'm talking about. So in the event that many of us have campaigns next year, how much time and resources do we have to put to this as individual district reps? I don't know. I would support this effort on the November ballot. That's what I would do. So thank you, Chairman Bueller.
Ms. Wegner?
Thank you. So I have a couple questions here. I was in public health and we talked about having a backstop, and then I was in finance where they said it wasn't needed. So we had talked about the 3-year look back and wondering if the levy is gone, so we erase that line item of levy, how is there a 3-year look back to possibly backfill them, backstop them if they are not getting enough money from the sales tax?
I think the language that's proposed this morning eliminates that look back.
the levy would go away with the referendum. And as I personally said at Finance Committee, I think the board can still feel comfortable that the resources are going to be there. You are immediately increasing revenue, maybe 30% for mental health, and the number is going to go up from there. When you look at the history of sales tax revenue, it goes up every 1 year in the last 11, I think, and that was the COVID year, and it was just barely down. But it goes up every year. I mean, we know that, it would be really what would be the scenario where retail is dropping significantly? I don't see that. In addition to that, historical fact that sales tax just goes up. We can take confidence in that. But in addition to that, remember, if this proposal goes on the referendum in March and passes, the collections will begin in July. And in September, a second property tax distribution will come to Mental Health Board. Another $5.5 million is going to come in September, even though we started collecting tax in July. So that I think that immediately creates the kind of fund balance that Member Scala referenced. So it's instantly there. We've got the fund balance, and I personally think that we ought to be able to manage a fund balance of $5.5 million right off the bat to protect against some concern about future dips in the revenue.
That fund balance, would that be our fund balance or would that be their fund balance?
Theirs.
Okay, so they would manage it,
Right.
not us. Okay, you
Right.
said we would manage it.
I mean,
All right.
and Chairman Bueller and I had some of this conversation. I mean, you are still the overseer of the budgets, right? I mean,
Right.
you are still adopting the budgets, and I think you have a role and a responsibility to make sure that a fund balance is maintained at mental health. But it's there. It's going to instantly. We're going to start collecting in July, $1 million a month plus, and then we're going to have another $5.5 million coming in on property tax.
So you did mention in finance that there would be a look back, but there's not, right?
We did mention at finance that because we didn't have this revised referendum language that Kyle presented this morning.
Okay.
I said at finance that we kind of had two different statutes here, one predating the other. You had 1960 Mental Health Act statute and an early 1990s property tax limitation law. That PTEL law is the one that with a 3-year look back, the tax just goes away. So that, and it was that, without specifically referencing the language going away, I just said that's what would happen if we don't levy for 3 years.
Got it.
But now Kyle has kind of blended those two together.
Okay. So I do see that Leonetta is in the audience. Would you mind coming to a microphone? Is there anybody from the board that's here too, or just Leo? No, there's no one here. Okay. Thank you. So a couple of us attended the mental health board meeting when you guys discussed this, and I know that it was unanimously passed, but there was concern about a backstop or making sure that everything was covered. So I would like to hear from you what your opinion is about this resolution, the way it is worded now without a backstop, and then also what you can do to educate the public, not lobby the public to vote a certain way, but what have you guys planned to do to educate the public? Because I think we need to hear from the mental health board who this is directly affecting before we vote a certain way.
Okay, your first question was regarding what the board feels regarding this referendum. And at this time, our board, did pass a resolution at our end asking for the county board to ensure that all 3 disabilities that we currently are funding will continue to be funded under the sales tax. And according to, what the state's attorney's office is stating, he's stating that it is being covered. I know that we'll do some things at the back end to look at adding some things to the legislation to also ensure that. But at this point, we are trusting our state's attorney's office's investigation on this matter. We would like to have a backstop. We did want that, but at this point, as long as all the disabilities are covered under the sales tax, that's what we need to ensure moving forward. Regarding, our attorneys have stated there's just a very fine line between education and advocacy. And at this point, we're just gonna follow what the county is doing and putting any Q&As on our website, and, trying to educate in that manner. Obviously, if, there's questions from, the public, we will be answering those, but at this point, we can't advocate ourselves, so we're not planning on doing that. So we're just gonna be trying to educate through our website at this point.
So have you heard of any service organizations or any group out there that might be out there talking about the resolution, or the resolution and the referendum, and what they might do to advocate for it?
No, it was mentioned at our network council meeting, and there was interest from the funded agencies once the county board had made the decision, and moving forward, there was some interest from that network council agency membership group to help educate.
But no plan yet?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And our discussions this week are what does the FAQ really look like? And we really kind of envision it as a living document.
Yep.
As questions come in, we can absolutely add them at a moment's notice to the FAQs so that every question could be answered in a timely fashion.
And I want to thank Teresa, kind of helped us think through this idea, and if we end up going ahead with the referendum, I'd like to get going on it right away. I was going to mention this in my report, but if you guys have questions that you think need answers to, please share them with staff, and we can flush those out and get them up on a frequently asked questions page.
Mr. Shorten.
So I'm in favor of putting this on the ballot and the March ballot. For close to 10 months, 11 months, we heard a drumbeat from mental health providers that there's a mental health crisis and there's urgency. And there was resistance, and I had that resistance to increasing property taxes. There's the question about regressive tax, and when this idea was first brought forward from a member of the public, I received an email about that and thought about it quite a bit. And every tax is regressive. It's just who does it impact more? And I look at the people that are most vulnerable within our county, and that's seniors. And a lot of them are on fixed incomes to begin with. And yes, the sales tax is certainly going to impact them. But reality is, whether they're living in a house that they own or somewhere that they rent, if you increase the property taxes X%, likely their cost of rent or their mortgage portion of the tax bill is going to go up X%. So that doesn't concern me. So again, there's a need for funding, there's urgency. Timing is a concern relative to education. I think we're talking about education versus advocacy. And we talked about in committee and in public health that as a county, we can't advocate, we can educate. Now, outside of that, certainly any special interest group, whether it's those in favor or those against, they can take measures to promote their particular point of view. And we're in a different world now where those types of campaigns can be formulated and executed within weeks or a week time. You can put together a mailer, and this comes from experience, have it to the printer, and have it hit mailboxes within a week. If you want to advertise in the newspaper, it's pretty simple. Radio, especially during campaign season, they have reduced rates. And then certainly the internet and social media, well, they give you a couple extra hoops to jump through now, but you can get it up pretty quickly and you can reach a wide audience. I've used it myself, and for $25 over a short period of time, I can have my message in front of 2,000 people in a targeted area pretty quickly. So those folks that on the advocacy side, that want to advocate for or against, the time is available, the resources are available, and I think that we can move forward. More so if we push this to November and it fails, then as I understand it, statute would prevent the question from being answered or asked again on a ballot for another year. So therefore, you might end up in a situation where it fails in November, and then you have to wait until effectively a year and a half to even ask the question, and then you're looking 2 years out to have the additional funds come in. So if there is this urgency, this mental health crisis that needs to be addressed, the resistance my resistance personally is to put a massive property tax increase on our seniors in the county. I think this is the best way to go. And it gives an opportunity to the voters to say yes or no. Thank you.
Mr. Kunkel?
Mostly I would be echoing Mr. Shorten's comments, but some of the stuff that board members have used here, especially right now with this campaign season going on for March, it's a great thing, because if you're advocating for this as you're campaigning for your normal campaign, we're getting the message out. That's great. This is a mental health crisis. The sooner we put this together, the sooner the funds are available. Having that July starting to collect the money, of course, we're gonna end up with another $6 million in monies possibly available to the mental health. I think it's a great thing to put it together early. And we saw when this mental health crisis and this 2.5 came to this board, we saw how quickly the mental health community put together their public comments. They brought people in here, rallies, great. They do that. They do that well. They don't need an entire year to do that. We've given them notice. We can advocate for it. I think this is a great thing to put together for March. And I think it has a lot better chance of passing in March than it would in November. Thank you.
Just, we can't advocate. We need to make that very clear. We cannot advocate it. It's by state statute, so. Mr. Kearns.
Okay, I'll be another one who agrees that we should put it in March. And the reason I'm saying is much like Mr. Shorten's response is, you know, this year's levy, we barely passed that. We only, one vote swing and it went to a tie. And you will jeopardize, I feel, next year's budget process by going in November. You would jeopardize the mental health board's budget and levy, because we're gonna have that the same battle that we had this year, we're gonna have next year if this is if this fails, one, and if we don't put it on November or March. If we put it on November, we've got that same battle and we don't know what's gonna happen. So get it out of the way in March if they do it. The other thought is, you know, the tax bills will come out next year. And the people, every other organization besides this board, which we took a minimal increase, but every organization has gone, almost everyone, has gone to a maximum. They've taxed to the max. And those tax bills are gonna hit the people. You'll have less likely chance of passing this in November. So that's the only comment I make, why I would rather do it in March, because it's not gonna pass in November, because everyone will have their tax bill and they're gonna say, this is nuts.
Mr. Reiner.
The questions I have that are coming up on this in my mind is we're possibly going to have a $6 million or a $4 million surplus or a backstop, however you want to call it. Is this to be spent, this additional funds next year, by whom? I mean, what would change? Is this just a bump for their budget by $4 million?
Yeah, I'm inferring from the discussion on on a fund balance, it's just, you have enough there to weather any down year on retail sales. And historically, retail sales have not gone down. And they've been pretty regular increase there. As 1 year out of the last 11, we've seen anything resembling a decline. So I think we'd have to talk about how large a fund balance would be appropriate and necessary. I mean, their mental health board has been using a bit of their fund balance the last couple of years, so it's been decreasing. But I don't think that you would need 6 million in the fund balance off the top of my head.
Well, my question is from our discussion this year or in 2024, this is going to give them a surplus of what their current budget is, an additional 4 to 6 million. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, again, if this is on in March, and if it passes, collections will begin in July. So it's going to be
substantial
little over $1 million a month is what we would anticipate.
A substantial bump.
Right.
So,
but because you've already adopted an $11 million levy for 24, the first installment will be in June, the second installment will be in September. And that's where you're going to have two sources of revenue for the last 5 months of
right.
Of 24.
So for 24, we haven't helped the taxpayer at all. We've kicked them. You know, not only have we given them that 11 million in their property taxes, we're giving it to them in the sales tax, in which I'm all right because it's only a short term that this bump is going to be incurred, but with this $6 million or so surplus, does anybody have control of curbing that spending? Because I mean, you know what the big argument in October, as I recall, was, you know, although the mental health board needs funds and there is a mental health problem, that's still of our $72 million budget, 15% of it. Now it's going to be, you know, over 20% of our budget is, for 24 at least, right? Going to their, is anybody protecting that money? I mean,
Well, there's a budget in place for the next fiscal year.
Right, so this would be
If they
just,
exceed their budget, they need to come to the county board for approval, if I'm correct.
Yeah, we're feeling our way through this, but I'm imagining if this went into place and if it passed, next fall, we would be talking about, you know, adopting a county budget in this with $11 million less on the levy. And then we'd be talking about, you know, you guys approving a mental health budget that would be larger, and you would be talking about what's an appropriate fund balance then. Yeah, and you'd have the tools to have that discussion.
Will it be spelled out by doing this on the sales tax that we will no longer be putting them on our property taxes?
That's exactly what's in front of you here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Greeno?
So I just wanted to clarify that county board members could redirect questions to the FAQs for the mental health board and from the county so that we could edify constituents. And then I just wanted to ask, well, I wanted to ask a few things, but the advocacy by the funded organizations, they would have no restrictions in promoting it?
Not at all.
Okay,
And
great.
and you as a board member can certainly advocate it. We just
You
can't
can.
spend, we can't spend public dollars in that advocacy.
Great.
You can-
Okay, that's
you can
great.
trumpet
Okay.
all you want that you would think this is a good thing to do.
Okay, that's very good to know. And then, and so my understanding is that with adequate current reserve funds, they would also be probably gaining interest on bank balances and investment funds that are probably going to exceed their expectations, and then have the windfall of the 6-month additional revenue from the sales tax, which will put them in an excellent, I mean, this is an excellent position going forward. to budget and adequately fulfill the services of the county and expand. I mean, this alone could pay for a facility for our children. So this is excellent.
It'll be a 5-month, but not 6, but yes.
Okay.
And I won't suggest how it's used.
Absolutely, of course.
Thank you for the second opportunity. I wanted to clarify, and I'm going to ask that Ms. Rizzi comes back up to the microphone. I wanted to clarify, at the Network Council, if you can't say, did the network have any concerns about the fact that they're going to be expected to be the advocates for this? So like personally, like we heard me say earlier, like I don't actually advocate for the sales tax increase. And I was wondering if you could comment on if it seemed like, yes, that the advocates are proponents of this.
There was some concern, originally regarding, as everyone else has had concerns, regarding, the sales tax impeding those that we are delivering services to. But as others have indicated, it's, the property taxes are doing the same, through increases in rents and so forth. So those concerns, I think, have been alleviated. As far as the plans, there have been no plans that have been put in place at this point that I'm aware of regarding the education to the public and the advocacy to the public from the Network Council members. So it's just a fine line that the Mental Health Board is going to be in. So depending on, again, we informed our Network Council that we would disseminate the information on what the county board's decision is regarding the referendum, but then it would be up to them to take action and do that planning. I have no idea how they're going to gain resources to educate the public regarding mailers and where that money would come from. I have no idea if they're committed to doing that on their own. So there's a lot of questions there. And again, we can't get in the middle of that.
Right.
It would be their piece to plan. So I don't have any of that information. So at this point.
Okay, I mean, as I reiterate, like when we say that it will pass in March than November, anybody who's listening to us, I mean, that sounds like we're playing a game of guessing. Not to you, this is not to you, this is to the board. And so then this is another reason why I'm very concerned when we say, well, it'll pass now, but it won't pass in November. That's saying that we are hoping that a lower turnout results in this, and that always seems too close to voter disenfranchisement for me, so. All right, thank you, I'm done. I'm not gonna buzz in again.
Ms. Ness.
I think the plan going forward is weak. I think FAQs on the website, they're fine, but if that's all we're doing, it's not gonna work. I can't tell you the number of people, the doors I've knocked on, people don't go to websites. They go to people. And so if that's the big plan, that the Mental Health Board and the county is gonna put the FAQ and that's it, that's not gonna get us to where we wanna be. That's my own personal opinion. I also want to be clear. I think, and I'm not opposed to chasing the money because I think it's important. We do have to fund up services. But when we talk about a youth and adolescent center, we're talking about capital, we're talking about millions of dollars. There is no local hospital that has any interest in having an inpatient. There's no interest, there's no money. These are underinsured or uninsured children. It is not a financially viable project for a healthcare system. So the only place they have to go is to the mental health network and the levy. And that's the primary source of fund. I just want to be clear about that. So while it sounds like a lot of money in a big reserve, it's not gonna get growth. And I get it. Maybe we'll come back in 2 years and increase it. I would love for this to pass. I would. But I have 12,000 registered voters in my district. A mailing is $6,000. I'm not gonna do that. So, you know, of course, if the board chooses to pass this, I will move it forward in my district as best I can. I would not operate in opposition to a board decision. I want to be clear about that. I do think it is more thoughtful to wait and do more education. But should it pass, I will do what I can to move it forward in District 7. I'm done.
I don't often speak, but I think we're presented with a very unique opportunity here to increase funding to mental health by nearly 30%. And at the same time, if we want to talk about property tax relief, and we're serious about property tax relief, a 13% reduction in the county's portion of your property taxes is meaningful, and be able to increase funding at the same time. The timing allows a healthy, very healthy reserve to the Mental Health Board. I feel like the goalposts are kind of moving here. We want to backstop because we don't think that we're going to have enough reserves in the Mental Health Board. But it's clear that the timing of the sales tax being put into place, that they're going to have very healthy reserves. This is a win-win for everyone. As far as the public commenter that came here and brought this idea forward to us, it's not just an average citizen. He's on a mental health board in another county next to us. He's very well versed in how mental health boards can be funded, and it's a fantastic idea. It's a win-win for everybody, especially this year when property taxes are going to go through the roof. We owe it to the taxpayers to have a significant reduction in the county's portion of your property taxes. So, thank you. Seeing no further comments, we can move on to the next item, 17A1. Ms. Greeno.
Thank you. This was brought to my attention by constituents regarding Hickory Nut Lane, and the decrease from the speed limit from 45 to 40 miles an hour. And the impression that I got was that residents really didn't understand the process, and that they needed, that it would benefit them to be able to advocate for their position. They thought that they had gone through a process, having a traffic study that showed that the traffic speed limit should be dropped by 5 miles an hour. Additionally, I don't know that the Transportation Committee was aware that there are plans in process for further residential development, and I am hoping that this could go back to committee for reconsideration in January.
Okay. No other items pulled on the agenda. Pete, you got a report for us?
Thank you. Yeah, I do have the written report in front of you. So again, thanks to all the elected officials and staff that helped us put that together. Want to again reiterate, if we do go ahead with the referendum next Tuesday, if you've got ideas on what was good content for the mental health tax frequently asked question page, we'll get going on that right away. And I've kind of been brainstorming some already, and I've got a list of things that we're thinking about, but working that. Member Greeno referenced speed limits, and I wanted to point out on the ordinance under the review now, we're trying to treat these speed limit ordinances a little bit differently than we have in the past. These ordinances come to Transportation Committee, and then sometimes they get amended. This one got amended, and we're not seeing what got amended out. We're trying to approach this a little bit differently this year. So if you see, or this time, so if you see on the attachment, you can see the roads that were presented, and then the roads that ultimately proceeded with a recommendation. So there is a difference there, and that's something we haven't done in the past. So to your point, Terry, you can see that it was not forwarded, but that's what was going on there. I guess the last thing I wanted to note, Adam emailed to you all yesterday kind of an update on fiber, and I wanted to give him a minute or two to just talk about this because it is an important step in our pursuit for additional fiber in the county.
Ms. Campbell, you had a question?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned it when we were talking about the speed ordinances, but I have broached the topic or idea that maybe because the ordinance itself is amended to reflect what was passed out of transportation. In the past, we didn't see these, so this first step here and I thank you, Pete, for doing that, is to include those that did not make it out so that people are aware of them. One possibility, and I'm just going to put it out there and we can have a conversation about it, but that each individual request, if it's denied in transportation or does not get passed, it still moves forward for a full consideration by the board, so that we're not having to go through this process of going back to transportation and working it out that way, if the board and the transportation committee would be amenable to that. So that would just be a suggestion on my part.
Adam?
Good morning, thank you. Yeah, it's Pete said you have the memo in front of you on Western broadband expansion. It's also about state and federal broadband money that's coming in, as well as the challenge of the broadband maps. I'll keep it short, as Pete said. We are registered as a challenging agency. I wanted to confirm that for the board. In this memo, you'll find information on how the state is allowing challenges, what the federal government is looking for in terms of speed and latency in terms of those challenges. But really the most important thing that I wanted to explain to you is, if you have information, if you have constituents, if you have people in your districts that are talking about access where they don't have it, I don't see us challenging any of the red dots on the state broadband map that are already going to be registered as unserved or underserved. It's really about those areas, and I'm hearing it a lot, and I really like your outreach and your help. Feel free to just contact me. You have my email, you have my phone number, my direct line is in the memo. If you know of anyone who does not have service, where there is proposed service, or where there is someone who says there is service but there actually isn't, we are allowed to challenge the map where there are no markings, where someone says, look, I don't have service, but not to name names, but any vendor says, yes, you do. We can challenge that, and there are ways to do that. I'm running point on this. I've got us registered with the state, so if you have any questions, certainly let me know. It's going to start opening sometime mid-January. They have not given us the dates, but they've told us it's going to be tight. I already have some information from some board members that we are planning to use to submit for several addresses that are stated as served but not. The state will allow us to challenge if someone gives you a quote to install anything above a normal installation cost to get you service. So I'm happy to run point on this. Any questions, certainly I'm available, or certainly after the meeting or any time going forward. I don't want to waste your time on it, but I'll give it back to Pete if there aren't any questions.
Ms. Greeno?
So this goes to Pete, but I do want to thank you for those 7 lonely houses.
We're going to put those in with your information
Thank
about the
you.
vendor. Absolutely, they're
Thank
going
you.
in.
Pete, from conversations with other board members, I think that it would be helpful, if it's possible, if we could have a simple formula that would show the average house valuation, equalized assessed valuation for McHenry County, just to average, and then what the property taxes were prior to this year, and then show the impact of the quadrennial reassessment, then the impact of the new growth, and then the impact of the levy increase with regard to PTEL, all of that, and then just show the results on that average house of what's happened with the county tax levy. Because people may think that it won't go up more than 5%. And this way they could see it and know it and be able to talk to constituents about it.
Specifically on the $72 million the county levied?
No, just an average house. So like if an average house in McHenry County is 300,000, show what their, equalized assessed valuation would be this year, prior to this increase, and then what the property taxes were for the county, and then what the impact of the quadrennial reassessment, the new growth, and the levy, and then show what their new equalized assessed valuation is and what their new property taxes are. And that would, I think, really help us articulate, when we're talking to residents.
Right. Hold up. I appreciate the question. Can we talk about this offline? It
Sure.
seems like you could get a little bit better clarification through email or a personal meeting. I think that would be fantastic. Love the question.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wegner, do you have a question for Adam?
I do, yeah. So Adam, sorry, first of all, would you send all of us the map that they have that, for the planning of the fiber? And the the current access that.
Yes,
we
it
have
is
as a county?
it's an online web-based, it'll be a link, but I can certainly send it
Yes.
out to all of you,
That's what I
absolutely.
mean. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've put in a couple of the administrators' reports in the past, but I'll specifically send it out like I did the memo last night.
Thank you, yeah, because you've shown it to me and I appreciate that. So just a couple questions when it comes to broadband. Are we spending any of our own money? I know we did the planning, but is the county spending any of our own money or any ARPA money on any of the fiber installation?
Any of our own money or ARPA money would be minimal in the north central area if Connect Illinois Round 3 funding is approved for that vendor who has submitted for that area. The county has committed to, I say minimal costs in that we would put something forward, a few $1,000s here, $10,000 there to connect what is called a CAI, a community area, an anchor institution, excuse me, community anchor institutions, village halls, libraries, schools, that sort of thing. But that is the only area where we've committed any money.
So is the county applying for any grants toward laying the fiber, or are we leaving it all to third parties?
Not at this time, the county's not submitting, but we have put in all the support that was necessary on our behalf to support the vendors that are applying to the state for that.
So we're relying on the vendors to lay the fiber.
Vendors would own the fiber if it goes in as part of Round 3, yes.
And is it their decision where the fiber is laid then, or do they have to follow our plan?
No, they have to follow the broadband map, and that's gonna get even more strict coming next year with the Illinois BEAD funding, not to get into the details too much, but it's even more strict coming in 2024.
Okay.
The map will dictate where that fiber is put.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions? Got anything else for us, Pete?
No, thank you.
Okay, we do have need for executive session today, so I will entertain a motion to enter executive session for pending litigation 5 ILCS 120/2C11 and to review the executive session minutes from the 9/14/23 meeting. Mr. Scala makes the motion, Ms. Meshes seconds. Kathy, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Altoff. Yes. Campbell. Yes. Godemaler. Yes. Greeno. Yes. Hendricks. Kaminsky.
Yes.
Kearns. Yes. Kunkel.
Yes.
Meshes. Yes. Ness. Yes. Reinhardt.
Yes.
Sauger. Shorten.
Yes.
Scala.